Turn up the dial, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wide variety. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories are talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the group. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your host, Dr. Dean Bertram.
Greetings, all my fellow weirdos and weirdettes. Welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram, and I'm delighted that you've decided to spend the next hour or so of your life with me, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or X, or listening to the show on just the audio-only version, which drops on all podcast platforms on the Friday, the day after we go live at 9 p.m. on Thursdays. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope you're keeping warm if you're in North America, particularly up in the north where I am, and I know where my guest is tonight as well. It's been brutally cold. I think we've had some record lows, actually, for this time of the year. It feels like Christmas and January got here early. I'm in a snow-blanketed cabin at the moment, which is probably a wonderful time to talk about the kind of weird and unusual things we'll be talking about tonight. Before I jump over, though, to the wonderful guest that we have for you tonight, I did want to just a little bit talk about my short film, The Shaver Mystery, which I know many of you are aware of because I've been talking about it for so long. It's a standalone version or a standalone section, really, from my upcoming feature documentary, The Man Who Invented Flying Saucers, about Raymond Palmer, Richard Shaver, and the creation of modern UFO belief. But The Shaver Mystery's had a wonderful festival run for the last couple of years. It's played at dozens of fests and cons. We are getting relatively close, I imagine, to the end of the run now. In May of this coming year, would have been going for 2 years. If you haven't got to any of the many events it's played at, you have a chance this month, all of December. It's playing at Another Hole in the Head in San Francisco, and they also have an online version via the Eventive site. So you can actually go to Another Hole in the Head, and I think their website is AHITH, Another Hole, which is obviously short for Another Hole in the Head.com. So that's AHITH.com, or just Google Another Hole in the Head. And you can go and watch The Shaver Mystery online for all of December. I think you have to buy a ticket to a shorts block, watch some other amazing films. And while you're there, just check out all the incredible movies that are playing there. The next screening that I know of, although I do think there's going to be another one or two, perhaps before May, announced, is going to be at Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st to 3rd, which is in Wisconsin. And if you go and check out Contact Modalities Expo, and that website is contactmodalitiesxpo.com, you can buy tickets already. I'll be screening the film there. I'll also be talking about the Shaver mystery. There's all kinds of amazing guests. Jimmy Church is going to be there, Chris Bledsoe. Just look at, and our own network, actually, Barnaby Jones from the Untold Radio Network is going to be there as well. It's just a shock loaded, incredible event. It's going to be an awful lot of fun. I hope to see some of you in person there, because that might be the last screening of the Shaver mystery before the feature version, The Man Who Invented Flying Saucers, comes out. Anyway, enough about all of that. Let's get into the guest. I'm so delighted to have him. I've wanted to have him on the show for years now. He's the founder and creative director of Small Town Monsters, a full-scale documentary production company based in Massillon. I hope I pronounced that right. I'll check with him. Massillon, Ohio, with a team of creative and business staff. Since 2015, he has directed and produced more than a dozen acclaimed films and series, including The Mothman Legacy, On the Trail of Bigfoot, American Werewolves, Bloodlines, The Jersey Devil Curse, as well as YouTube series like Bigfoot Decoded. His work, widely available on Amazon, Tubi, and other platforms, blends journalism, folklore, and cinematic storytelling to explore cryptids, paranormal mysteries, and small town legends. And I've been lucky enough to have a number of his films at Midwest Weird Fest, a film festival I run in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, first weekend of March over the years, and the audience always absolutely adore them. So I can't say how delighted I am to have joining me tonight Seth Breedlove. Greetings, Seth.
Hey, is that is that the hole in the head? Is that the Balboa in San Francisco?
Yeah, I think so. You probably played there at some stage over there.
I love the Balboa. I've been to the Balboa, and then I think there's a second location that's owned by the same people. I don't know if it's called the Balboa, but I did 2 festivals there. We did and actually was flown out there for them. Some of my favorite experiences.
Oh, nice.
With like STM travel were at the Balboa. But one of my all-time favorite experiences was the Balboa back in what was it? It must have been like 2017, 2016. I was there with Bob and Kathy Strain. Kathy is the tribal relations manager for the Stanislaus National Forest. She's done a lot of the hairy man pictograph research and Bigfoot research. She was with me in Area X out in Oklahoma, and she's a Bigfoot researcher. But we were there together. Bobo was also there, and but my favorite memory from that trip, I met a ton of people, like really influential people in my life, including Kai Wada Roth, who actually like works at the theater and he lives in San Francisco, is one of the coolest, weirdest people you'll ever meet.
Oh, wow.
But when I was there, my favorite experience is I went into the theater the morning of the event, and I got there super early. They weren't even unlocked. And this guy making popcorn had to let me in the front door, and I walked in playing Slanted and Enchanted, the album by Pavement. And I walked in and I was like, no way. I was like, I've never, and he was playing the song called Here. That is like, I don't know if you know this album.
No, I don't. But
this was like college rock in the very like early to mid 90s, but not like grunge. I don't know what you would call them. The lead singer, Stephen Malcolmus, does his own solo stuff too. That's really great. But anyway, they were playing the song Here, and Here was like, as a kid, I was like 18, 19. But when I discovered that song, that was my anthem for like 2-3 years, but no one ever knew it. And he sings like out of tune, and it's like a weird song, but I never expected to hear that song probably 20 years after I had last heard it. And it started playing and I almost broke down in tears. I ended up talking to the guy behind the counter for like 2 hours about music. And I don't know. That just brought, I love the Balboa, and I love the Balboa, and I love San Francisco.
I might have missed that out. I was in college then as well, but often a lot of that stuff that was big in America was sometimes big in Australia, and sometimes it just passed us by.
Yeah, I could see
that. Often. People in my generation go, "Oh, you must have known this time." I'm like, no, we never heard it. Ever.
Well, that was what was cool about it, was I just wouldn't have expected. Pavement was big on the college scene, but like it was at a really specific time, and that time had passed by like 30 years when this guy was playing the song. And it's not a poppy, it's like it's not a B-side song. It's on Slanted and Enchanted, which is probably their best known album, but it was like it's like, it might be the last song on the album. And it's just a really slow, depressing, sad song, which is like my favorite stuff.
Were you back in your college days? Were you already interested in the type of subject matter of the films that you
No.
went on to make for the last decade?
First of all, like, I only went to college for one day. So my college career, my academic career was not very impressive. And no, I didn't really have an interest in this stuff until 2000. I want to say like 2006, 2007. And I graduated high school in 99. So, no, and I didn't know anything, you know, my introduction to it, actually, now that I say that, I have a very specific timeline of when so my introduction to the paranormal is like a thing that existed outside of science fiction was, my older sister, Sarah, came home one day, with a copy of John Keel's Mothman Prophecies, and it was the novelization of the movie cover.
Okay.
So it was the Richard Gere movie poster as the cover, but it was the John Keel book. And I was like, oh, should I read this? Because, you know, in my house, we were raised by a mom who owned a bookstore. So we read a lot as kids. And I said, should I read this? And my sister was like, no, you know, I don't think you get it. And it's really scary and demonic. Like everyone in it is seeing demons. And, you know, because like I came from a really staunch Baptist background, and so anything involving like UFOs or Mothman or any of that stuff had to be demonic. So we stayed away from it when I was a kid. But we also like didn't even really, I just don't think we even really had an awareness of it. It's funny because I say that, but then the guy that really got me fully invested in it ran the sound booth at the church I went to at the time. So the guy and I who ran the sound booth, he had recorded a DVD with like a bunch of like, there was a documentary about Ogopogo or Champ. It was one or the other, and it was on there. And then he had put some, so there was a Bigfoot thing that had Peter Byrne in it. And then there was like 2 or 3 UFO things. He was like, here, I know you're a weirdo. So I figure, he goes, here, I know you're a weirdo like me. So I figure you'll like this. And he handed me the DVD, and I was going through a divorce at the time. So I was like, oh, I might like this. And so I watched it, and I did like it, and then it became like my entire life from there.
Wow. I love also that Mothman Prophecies, obviously, or the discovery of it had some impact. That book had an equally significant, I think, impact on me. Were you making film before you started to do documentaries in this space?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we were, so my director of photography, Zach, he and I became friends because I was sitting outside of a Borders Books. He was 17 at the time, and I would have been 18 or 19. And he was smoking a cigarette, and I was holding a New York Film Academy brochure. And he was like, "Are you going to film school?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be a filmmaker." And he was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then we went home, and he looked me up on AIM, AOL Instant Messenger. And we talked that night about filmmaking for like 3-4 hours. And then the first time we hung out, we made a short film. I don't know what it was. All I remember is we were chasing him down a cobblestone street in the ghettos of Canton. My brother was on top of we were driving a van, a huge passenger van. That was my car. And my brother was latched onto the top with one hand, and with the other hand, he was filming with Zach's camera, and we were chasing Zach down a cobblestone street, and we made that into some sort of movie. But yeah, we would make short films, but they were mostly like, we were big Christopher Guest fans. So like Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show and like mockumentaries was kind of like our deal. And, which is scary. I don't take that out of context, because now someone's gonna think I'm up to something shady here. But we loved, like, that was probably our favorite genre, and it was like an accessible genre, right? Because you could make that with no budget. You just had to come up with some interesting characters and a funny story, and then you could make something. Especially back then, because this would have been 99 through like 2003. You didn't even really have, there was no place to put this stuff online. So you just made it, and then maybe you showed it to some friends, and that's about it. Which honestly is great, because we'd have been canceled out of existence by now if someone saw that stuff that we made.
It's funny. It's the weirdest thing. In that same period, it must have been around 99. I shot a short film with my girlfriend at the time and her brother, which was a cryptozoological mockumentary based on a non-existent creature in Australia called the Warramagutu, which was like this feathered serpent, I guess like a quetzalcoatl, called, I think it was called the Great Warramagutu. And we shot this 30-minute like mock doc. And of course, you're exactly right. We didn't have anywhere to post it. The only people who've ever seen that film.
What did you film it with?
Our friends and family. I shot it with a Canon XL1S, which I had then, because I wanted to make a feature on that movie. So I did this deal with Canon. I'm sure you couldn't do it now, but I knew somebody who worked for Canon. I met her at a party, and we tried to get it for free, the camera, but they said, well, we'll give it to you for half of retail. So we snatched up the deal, because half of retail of the XL1S then, which was, the movie that Danny Boyle shot, 20 days later on. It was this hot. Now, of course, it's so outdated now, but at the time we were so excited to get our hands on it. So I think 4 of us chipped in to buy this camera, and then we started making these crappy short films, and some later films played at festivals, but Warramagutu played nowhere, except
Did you make that
on televisions.
Did you make that up? The Warramagutu?
Yeah. In fact, I think it was my girlfriend's brother, Andrew Mitchell, who came up with the title, The Great Warramagutu. And then he kind of did one draft, and then I was like, well, I want it structured slightly differently, and I fiddled with it. And then it was ridiculous, because to make a 30-minute short, unless it's like the Citizen Kane of shorts, it's never going to screen anywhere. Like a 30-minute short's really hard to program. Now I run festivals. I didn't know this at the time, so we never played anywhere.
How did you edit it?
Then I edited. I had a PC, and it wasn't Adobe, it was a free software that came with a PC magazine. And what was the name of it? You know how there were these free based
that's how we edited our stuff.
It was ULead. It was ULead, a free version of ULead. I don't even think ULead exists anymore, but that's what I edited. And we had to have, then you shot it on like mini DV, and you had to like use this hardwire thing into the computer.
You plugged the camera into the mine I edited with one of those. My mom was a very early stage Apple adopter, and I'm talking like she was one of the first people in the world to buy an Apple computer, and a Macintosh, and she edited her catalogs for her bookstore on this thing. And so she had given me one of those colored transparent, do you remember the Apple, the Macintosh computers that were like, they were transparent, weird looking, big, like space age looking, neon green. I remember plugging in my Sony camcorder into the computer itself, and editing with, I don't know if it was called iMovie or what, but it was whatever the proprietary Apple editing thing was. And you would move you would like condense a shot, and you would sit there for like 3-4 minutes while I condensed the shot. And that was like and we had no idea. I mean, hours and hours were spent on this, and no one ever saw it. Like we didn't know what to do with it. And it was, but we made 2 longer form mockumentaries. There was like a sequel that we made to the first one we made. And so we made 2 of them back to back. And then we also did like some other little thing. All the people I was friends with at that time, we were all like film geeks. I was just talking about this with Micah Hank's brother, Caleb. We were in North Carolina filming a Bigfoot thing, and he's like me, like he's written and drawn his own comic books. I haven't done that. I'm just saying, like, I'm a nerd like him. And sorry, I kicked my desk, but he was telling me like him and Micah used to make their own movies, and I was like, I think anyone our age, like in our age bracket, did that, because that was, at that point in time, it was the birth of independent, being able to do whatever you wanted, at least find some sort of audience somewhere.
Right.
All that came out of, I always think 2 things. Well, there's probably 3. Richard Linklater, directed Slacker.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one. I think Kevin Smith's Clerks obviously is like the one where we all saw this dude make a movie that any of us we thought could make.
Right.
He shot it. What did he shoot? That was that film? I don't even remember if it's not film.
I don't know. Maybe it was 16 mil or something.
Yeah. I think the other big one was Sex, Lies, and Videotape, because that's one where you're like, oh, I can actually do this in that format.
And of course, Robert Rodriguez did his El Mariachi, but he wrote the book Rebel Without a Crew.
Yeah.
Which was kind of disingenuous. I mean, I'm sure you and probably everybody in our kind of generation of filmmaking read that book, and it's disingenuous in a way because it makes it seem like, you know, you can go out and you can just make this film and you're going to have this massive release. But of course he already had certain, you know, he had some connections and had some things lined up, but was the most empowering book I'd probably almost ever read. Like, I read that book and I was like, I can go and do these movies.
Listen to him talk. Have you listened to him talk lately about making movies?
Not lately. Back in the day I did.
He still has the same impact on me. Like, just listening, he was on Rogan, and I listened to it and immediately called Eli, who's one of our filmmakers at SDM.
Eli Watson. We've had him talking weird about 2 or 3 times now. Great. I love his Ape Canyon movie, by the way. One of my favorite small town monster movies. Is spectacular.
It's really special. Yeah. He's got a really soft touch. He's with people that I envy, and is just like innate storytelling. I always say, like, everyone at SDM, everyone I've ever made movies with, they all have some ability that I was like, man, I wish I had that. Like, Alex can just go out and do whatever, get his own stuff, and he has no fear, and he's he's like the opposite of me in a lot of ways. And then Eli thinks very I don't know how to put he's got like a very dynamic approach to this stuff. But yeah, the Rodriguez was on Rogan, and they had this whole discussion about making movies, and it got me thinking about like AI and how AI is impacting film. And then I told Eli, I was like, you know, I'm working on this. I called him after I listened to the show, and I was like, I'm working on this Kinderhook movie, and it strikes me that like we had the opportunity to be Clash of the Titans, Ray Harryhausen. Like, everyone is going toward like the AI stuff visually, and I get it. Like, when it comes to independent film, especially, like, that's a thing that people love to attack independent filmmakers as if they're James Cameron, who can easily slap I'm not using AI in my movie when he's got $1 billion budget. But it opens a lot of doors for independence. But my thinking at that time when we were talking about it, I was like, I want to be like Clash of the Titans, Harryhausen. I want to do the best work with what is available to us right now that isn't AI, give it this like really unique voice. And that was all inspired by listening to that podcast with Rodriguez. I told you, dude, sometimes if I am on the right mood, I'll talk your ear off. So you might have to like end up stepping in and just shutting me up and moving me on to other topics.
No, I want to, I mean, it's obviously, it's a channel which is primarily talks about cryptids and the paranormal and things, but my key interest is film. So I have you on. So we're going to talk about the process. And did you ever watch John Pearson's Split Screen? Can you remember Split Screen as well? It was a TV show that was it was all about independent filmmakers. I think Pearson was maybe the agent who'd hooked up people like Spike Lee and people like that with distribution deals. And it's how amazing cable was back in the day. This guy had a cable television show just about independent film.
What time period?
I would have been watching it in the late 90s, early 2000s.
I'm surprised they didn't, because I used to watch like who was the dude that was kind of creepy? He was he was in New York. He had like P.T. Anderson and all those guys on, and he would know him. I can't think of his name. He ended up getting canceled out of existence for something, but I cannot remember this dude's name. But I used to love anything. That was the other thing that Caleb Hanks and I were talking about, was just like DVD commentaries and their impact on most of us that are like of our age range who want to make movies or are making movies. For a lot of us, that was our film school.
Yeah.
Like my brother and I would watch for fun. We'd put on like Evil Dead 2 and just watch the commentary track. Or I don't know, dude, The Rock, Michael Bay's The Rock has like one of the greatest commentary tracks of all time. And that stuff is like really like helpful when it comes to storytelling and film and how to tell a story visually and all that stuff. And it's sad, a lot of that stuff's gone away, but it's been replaced with YouTube. And I think YouTube's been huge for a lot of people. I learned how to make I relearned how to make movies through like Film Riot. And
Film Riot's great.
Yeah. And like Levi Allen has a channel called it used to be called Left Coast Media, but he does like adventure film stuff. And that's everything I've done is self-taught, which is probably pretty obvious. But I always go back to those early days of like for fun watching the commentary track on The Big Chill or whatever, like whatever I was watching.
Yeah, we've lost that with streaming. When DVD became a thing, that was one of the wonderful attractions for me. If I could pick up a DVD off the shelf and look at it and had director's commentary, it would make me want to buy it twice as much or 3 times as much as if it didn't have director commentary. So let's talk a little bit about, like you said you're self-taught, and you shouldn't self-deprecate yourself because you have an incredible body of work. Your output is prolific. I was fortunate enough in the very first year I launched my festival in America, Midwest Weird Fest, which is going into its 10th year now, that you submitted Cole, the Boggy Creek Monster. And I obviously immediately loved it. And I mean, I knew I was going to play it straight away. But that's before I wasn't in the cryptid space again yet. I'd done my PhD on UFOs a number of years before then. I kind of stepped away from anything paranormal. I'd run film festivals in Australia in the genre space. I'd been a journalist. I'd done various other things. But that was my kind of first introduction to you. But as far as I'm aware, small town monsters hadn't become a thing yet like it is now. When were you aware, when you started making films, I think originally in the Bigfoot space, because I think your first at least 3 films were kind of Bigfoot movies.
Yeah.
When were you conscious of this is going to be a career, this is going to be a thing now, and I'm going to be making, my production company is going to be making dozens of hours of content every year or more? Like when did that kind of click? That I'm guessing, because I'm assuming you were doing it kind of part-time at first. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I mean, I don't know, and I'd love to hear.
Well, yeah, I mean, we started filming. Minerva Monster was our first movie. We started filming it in the summer of 2014. In the fall of 2014, I filed the LLC for Small Town Monsters. So I kind of had it in my head that this was what I was going to go for. But it didn't really, it wasn't, and then, I actually did spring of 2015, I went down to part-time at my job, and started focusing on STM. I was focusing on STM as a full-time job prior to that. It's just that I was basically working 2 full-time jobs. I was working a desk job at a medical billing company, and I was, I'd edit and send emails and all that kind of stuff in the evenings, or sometimes while I was at my day job. And I built the thing while still having a full-time job. And then in the spring of 2015, I went down to part-time. I was able to do that and start really heavily focusing on what do I want this to be and what is it going to look like. And, that's right around the same time where we went and shot Beast of Whitehall. I wouldn't say there's a point where I knew it was working. There's never been a point where I'm like, this worked, because it's a family business. Like, there's no other way to look at it. My wife works here, and my washroom with my washer and dryer is just full of DVDs that, she packs every day and stuff like that. So my STM is a huge part of my everyday life too. It was probably not until 2017, after my ex-wife Adrienne and I had Tommy, and 3 weeks after we had Tommy, the Mothman of Point Pleasant came out and just exploded. in a way that was life changing, just like right out of the gate. Mothman. People, I mean, obviously people don't recognize, because who's going to be paying attention to this, but it is insane to me now to look back at what happened with Mothman of Point Pleasant and how big it was. Like, on Amazon at that point in time, it was like the 4th or 5th best-selling movie on the platform, ahead of like Logan, which had been out for a little while by that point. But it was like the movies ahead of us were like Rogue One, and I forget what else. And then I want to say it was Logan that was behind us, but this is 2017. Is that Logan year? I don't remember. It's all right around the same time. Right. And we've never experienced anything like it since. We've had movies come out that have done better. Like our most successful, most viewed movie is On the Trail of Bigfoot: The Discovery. But in terms of like a movie that came out and actually seemed like it broke through, broke past the sort of like genre barrier or niche cryptid barrier or whatever, it's Mothman of Point Pleasant. Like, everyone was talking about that movie. And then that's right around the same time where Wingard, Adam Wingard messaged me, because he had seen, he came to us through Invasion on Chestnut Ridge.
That's that's one of my favorite small town monster movies, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it was around that 2017 time period where I was like, okay, now we really got to, like, what are we going to do next? How are we going to up the ante? And then it became, well, next year we'll do 3 movies. And then it became, let's do 4. And then it became, let's do 4 movies plus a YouTube series. And now it's 4 movies. Well, this 2026 year is very different. We're doing 2 standard sort of feature films, and then 2, I don't know what you call them, like premium, whatever, higher budgeted than what we're doing on YouTube right now, like direct to YouTube stuff. It's a higher budget than that, but On the Trail of UFO Season 2 and Sasquatch Factor. So it's been a progression, but a lot of it is driven by survival too, because, like, we pivoted to YouTube because we were hitting the ceiling on what we could accomplish in 2020 with independent films at the level we were working at. We don't have like $1 million marketing budget or anything like that. And you're only going to get so far when you can't make this huge spend on that kind of thing. And so, in 2020, I started talking to Alex about doing, like a survival YouTube show. I was like, what if we did like what the Outdoor Boys do, but we do it with Bigfoot? And Alex was like, oh, I'd love that. I was like, all right, let's do it. And so I hired Alex. Alex was like the first STM employee.
Listen, he's one of my favorite people in the entire space. I've had him on the show a number of times. He's so great. He's so sincere. No, he's great.
Yeah.
And I love his content too. I'm so glad that he's part of Small Town Monster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is a thing where, like, some people come into to STM and it's obvious, like, it doesn't quite mesh with like what our vision is for what we should be creating. And then there's people that come in and just immediately get it. Like, I've had conversations with people who wanted to make stuff with us, and it was like, it's obvious this is not gonna fly with us, because I try to run the company like it's a collab more than it's like a business. I don't know how to explain that, but you want it to be like, especially for the people who have to go make and shoot and edit this stuff, you want it to feel free so they can kind of do their own thing. But at the same time, you don't want their own thing to deviate so far from what we've established as being our thing. And in other words, what I'm really afraid of, we just had an STM retreat, and I talked about this a lot at the retreat, is like, STM should be organic. Like, I don't like, we don't script. We don't do this a lot, but in not a lot, but some of the shows, like On the Trail of UFOs or On the Trail of Bigfoot or whatever, we'll do scenes where, like, I'm talking to other people. We don't script that scene, whereas television will, like, it'll be a scripted scene, and it's pretty obvious it's scripted.
And that
I
might
want
be
that.
because you're a filmmaker by background more than, do you know what I mean? You have that probably, I'm guessing, I might be speaking out of turn, but I'm guessing as a filmmaker, you and a documentarian, you want that organic feel rather than
Right.
something which is
Well, that, yeah, and a lot of that comes from my background in the newspaper, just because like my approach has always been to remain as objective as possible. And I think with television, you're always dealing with like, this is going to sell, so push this. So we're pushing back against that. But yeah, anyway, Alex came in, and Alex was one of the first outside people to work with SDM. He made our On the Trail of Champ back in 2018 that came out?
I remember it. I watched it as soon as it came out. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was obvious with Alex that like we both had the same kind of approach to this stuff when it comes to the filmmaking side of things. Alex and I don't agree on everything, but when it comes to like, don't fake stuff, and don't push an agenda, I think is ultimately the goal of everything we do. So with him and I, yeah, he was a natural fit, and Eli was the same thing. Like Eli had actually been messaging me for ages about wanting to get involved in STM. But I mean, at that time it was like, I can't fathom hiring people to work for me, because this is so, I knew from being behind the scenes how up and down it is, like year to year, especially in those early days of STM. It was really like, are we going to be here next year?
Right.
It still is. Like I would say 2021 through 2024 was probably the darkest days at the company there have been, just because like we lost our main distributor and they owed us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you did not realistically know if the company would stay, if we'd managed to stay in business, because we also didn't have a, like a distribution pipeline in place at that time. So, but my thing has always been, we're supposed to be a counter to everything else, at least in the mainstream. I still believe that independent people who with an independent attitude are gonna probably approach this subject in the right way. If it's driven by passion for the subjects or whatever. For me, it's become less about like a passion for Bigfoot or Mothman or whatever, and it's more about a passion for like preserving these stories as they actually happen, that's been a fun evolution too, because I started out saying that a lot, and I meant it, but it became something I was just saying. And then I kind of like, I hit a wall where I was like, I'm sick of saying this, and we're making money doing this. So am I really being honest by saying I really care about historical preservation? But then my mom died, and I was like, oh, like my mom's entire career as a bookstore owner was built around historical preservation. Like this is very much a part of who I am. So I do like, we just had that retreat, and that was a huge part of the retreat. We had a genealogist come in and give a talk about researching your family, like your family background. Cause I want that to be in the forefront of anyone involved in STM should respect their own history first, like their family history, the history of wherever they live, if it's Canada or the US or the UK, whatever. And learn as much as we can about where we come from, because it influences, who we are and who we're going to become and who our kids are going to become. And so I've really doubled down in the last year on that preservation thing, because that ultimately is the one thing that I can point at and say, this is what mainstream TV does not give a crap about. Like they do not care about the authenticity of this event. They want an entertaining product. And I get it. But our number one goal needs to be the preservation of that event as it happened.
I suspect you must appeal your model must appeal to incredibly decent people, because this is the first time I've had you on the show and first time I've talked outside of Messenger with you or outside of emails with you. But there's so many people who are a bigger part of the Small Town Monsters family, which is some of the nicest, most incredible people I've ever met in this space, whether it's Heather or whether it's Alex or whether it's Eli Watson or Jason Hewlett, the many people who've appeared in your shows. They're all really wonderful people. So there's obviously something you're doing which is attracting the right kind of people to want to make this content with you, to make these kind of films with you, to be part of that mission or that intention of preserving history. They obviously get it, because every single person I've ever had, and again, I've had probably half a dozen or more people on who have been part of Small Town Monsters or have appeared multiple times. Lyle Blackburn's another example. All these people are some of the greatest people in the paranormal filmmaking space that there are.
Yeah. No, Lyle was one of the first. Yeah, Lyle. I mean, it's funny. The first three movies were such varying degrees of weird crew changes, because the first movie I got in a huge fight with the producers, and then we didn't make anything else together, and I went and reshot Beast of Whitehall. I had already shot Beast of Whitehall with these other two guys, and then we got in a huge disagreement over things, and I had to go reshoot the whole movie. I did that with my dad and Brandon Dalo. So we shot this whole movie, the three of us.
Okay.
And then we turned around and made Boggy Creek Monster with a crew of like 12 people, which is like very different. Like it's one of the bigger crews we've ever taken on anything.
It's still one of my favorite films. I told Eli when he was on recently, because I love Eli's Ape Canyon movie. I haven't watched Alex's Ape Canyon movie yet. I need to, but I love that so much. And I said, listen, it might be my favorite Small Town Monsters film, the new Ape Canyon one by Eli. But I was like, I'll be honest though, I have a really soft spot for Boggy Creek Monster. So that
it's funny because like Boggy is one I actually have huge issues with. I love the way certain things look, but I also look back on it and I'm like, I wish I'd just like taken. We took a lot of time with that movie, especially compared to what we take now. But like at that time, I was still working a part-time job. So that, like I feel like I could have done a better cut of that, or just done a different sort of approach. Because at the end of the day, it's not really the story I wanted to tell. The story I wanted to tell was about Charles B. Pierce and the making of the movie. And we focused a little bit on that, but it wasn't much. It was more about, the cases that inspired the movie and then like the present day stuff. But I like a lot of stuff when I go back and rewatch that movie. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm impressed by the fact that we pulled off what we did with what we were working with, because we just didn't have a lot. But that Ape Canyon movie that Eli made, the sequence in that movie that I love is he brings all those people together in the room toward the end of the movie. It's all the relatives, and that's the kind of thing where like on the fly, I don't think I would think to do that in that way. I would do something different that wouldn't be as organic and feel as raw and emotional as that scene does. That to me is a really Eli moment. And Eli edits in a really cool way that I don't. I edit everything in one timeline in Adobe. And I don't, it's all I just put things one after the next in the timeline. And because I always go back to, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier on the Magnolia DVD. Paul Thomas Anderson talks about how writing a movie is like painting. You start at the beginning and then you move forward, and then you have to go back a little bit and you touch up some things here and there, and then you go forward and then you go back to that thing and then you touch up a little bit more, and then like you keep moving forward like that. That's how I edit a lot of the time. I'll put like a story cut in place of the movie that's like a 3-4 hour long really raw cut of the movie, and then I go back and I chop up, and then I start really polishing things, and then eventually it gets to a point where I'm just like stylizing the movie, like what's the style of the movie. But Eli edits scene by scene, so he creates like sequences for each scene, and I see like the advantage to that, because it it's very like, and you can see that approach in his edits in a way that you won't see in mine. You know, like he's very musical, like I said, dynamic, but he has a really musical approach to editing where like music beats hit at certain points and things. Like I've learned a lot from him in editing stuff that way, because Eli lived in my house for 30 plus days back in 2023, the same year my mom passed. He lived in my house for during it was longer than 30 days. It was like 40 days. He was editing Dogman Triangle, and he was having a hard time with it because he had never done a full feature movie. And I had a lot of feedback for him, and he was getting frustrated. And I was like, you know what? Just come to Ohio, live here, and you can stay at my wife's apartment. She still had her apartment. You can go stay at her apartment, and then come to my house every day. We'll feed you. We'll work together. So that's what we did for like 40 days. We worked on Dogman Triangle together. So I learned a lot from him during that editing process, just like seeing how he edits, because it's not the same way I do things. And it doesn't work for me in the same way it works for him. Sometimes I'll try to do it and it works okay, but his approach to it is very different from mine. But it's still good to learn from other people. I think that's ultimately like the biggest benefit of working at STM, is if you can actually spend time with each other. These retreats and stuff are really big for like Alex and I and things like that. Because like this retreat we just did, we had a friend of mine, Ward Heine, who actually directed our Werewolves Unearthed movie we put out a couple of years ago. He's a filmmaker in the paranormal space. He does a lot of like supernatural stuff, but he does a lot of work with like Tony Merkel. And Ward lives in Akron, wildly enough, so he lives 20 minutes from me. So Ward and I became friends, and then but Ward is like an incredible cinematographer. He's worked with like the DP on Stranger Things and stuff like that. Like he's got some crazy knowledge. So we had him come to the retreat and give like a workshop on cinematography, because I was like, we all need this. Like everyone that works here, even the guys that are like established, know what we're doing. Like I need it. So if I need it, everyone needs it.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that's the kind of thing that I think is like huge for people like us, where you're constantly kind of like working on this stuff. It can become muscle memory, and you're not really being creative with it. You're just I don't even know. It's literally like muscle memory. You just sit down and you start on a thing, and it can be, you can get, I don't know if it's laziness so much as just routine.
Yeah, I suppose we start to follow operative patterns when we're creating, if we're not careful. One of the things I love about the small town monster films, particularly the direction that they're going in now, and I saw that in Lost Contact, which you were kind enough to send an advanced copy of me to. I also saw it in Smoky Mountain, Sasquatch Search, and of course in Eli's what's the title of the Ape Canyon movie from Eli?
Eli's is Siege of Ape Canyon.
Siege of Ape Canyon. Yeah. I think in the paranormal space, so many documentaries focus on the phenomenon itself, and the phenomenon itself is kind of ephemeral. I mean, the stories are wonderful, but it's the people who have experienced these things and the people's connection with these stories, which to me as a filmmaker and just as an historian interests me the most. And I think Siege of Ape Canyon was fantastic on the way that it focused on Mark Mersell, who's I suppose the primary investigator of the Ape Canyon mystery. I've got Mark's little monograph on Ape Canyon over on my bookshelf somewhere. He's always been a real gentleman whenever I've had any online encounters with him. But for Eli's decision to focus on Mark Mersell's journey on discovering these things, I think made it, to me, more interesting, much like, and I don't want to spoil it because I know Lost Contact isn't coming out yet, but there's so many parts where you interview the original witnesses of it, who are fairly old now, because the Mantell case, which is about one of the most famous UFO cases in the history of ufology in 1948, a lot of the witnesses have obviously gone, but you you still get into some of the experiences with the original witnesses, which is amazing. And perhaps this is the most relevant because I'm talking to you now. And I love that the Smoky Mountain Sasquatch search, or at least the first episode, which I've seen, is kind of wrapped in this idea that you yourself have this connection to the land. So this is somehow going to be a personal story. That to me makes it a far more attractive tale, a far more attractive documentary series.
Yeah, I'm. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing that draws me into all this stuff to begin with. But I mean, more so than Lost Contact, which is very much like I was drawn to that story because of the guy Thomas Mantell. But then learning about the other thing about Lost Contact and that whole story that is tragic and sad is like the lasting effect of Thomas Mantell's death on his family is like we had the opportunity or the blessing or whatever you want to call it to interview Thomas's grandsons. Eric and Terry. And they talked about their dad and who would have been Thomas's son. And he ended up becoming like an alcoholic. And most of his life was ruined to some degree, not ruined, but he struggled with it the rest of his life. Just never really knowing his dad or not spending as much time with his dad. And so the lasting implications of that event really, while the rest of the world that is aware of it just kind of sees it as this fun UFO dogfight story, that's what I was drawn to with that one. But I mean, and like you said, Eli really did that well with Siege of Ape Canyon. The first thing that happened with Siege that we even made it as a movie is that Mark approached me. So Mark contacted me and was like, hey, I talked to Cliff about doing something together, and Cliff was like, just talk to Seth. So Mark had messaged me and I was like, I don't really want to do this unless I know you're actively involved and like a key part of the thing. So he was a big, like we wouldn't have made it without Mark coming to us in the first place, because I knew he had some level of ownership over that story. I don't know that he feels he does. I'm sure he does, but he would not admit it. Right. And I don't think he would do anything vindictive to anyone who went and covered it. But I wouldn't have wanted to make that story without him involved. But beyond that, and maybe even inspired by that, like the movie that I've got coming out that I'm really excited about. We've got movies coming out. Dawn of the Dogman comes out a week.
By the way, just quickly, Dawn of the Dogman is amazing. I watched it last night with my daughter and my mother, who's visiting from Australia for the holidays, and we were all riveted by it.
Oh, cool! It's
a fantastic film. It's up there in my, because I have so many small town monster movies that I love, but it's really up there. I really enjoyed that movie. I like it.
Awesome. Yeah, with that one, we're trying to pay homage to Linda.
I love that. I knew Linda. She came. In fact, I will premiered her first feature debut.
The Mountain Lion movie.
Yeah, the Return to Wildcat Mountain. And her son and her father came to and her husband rather came to Midwest Weird Fest. One of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Do you still have contact info for like her son? Because I would love to.
Yeah, I'll find it. I'll send it to you.
Because her and I had talked a bunch through email, and I watched that movie. When it first came out, she had sent it to me for like feedback, and I gave her feedback. I forget where I was going with that, but yeah, the movie was supposed to be, as much as I could make it a homage to her, because I know she was a little disappointed, like her encounter story wasn't in Bray Road Beast. That interview that's in Dawn of the Dogman is from Bray Road Beast. So I was able to reuse those sequences that were cut out of that movie. In a way that hopefully feels like a homage, not like
I loved it too, and it was dedicated to her, which I was really moved by. So I was so happy to see that on the screen.
Yeah, she was amazing. She was really sweet, and it's funny too because her background was similar to mine, where she was like a newspaper reporter. And when her and I met, we really hit it off, and then I got to spend time with her again in like I want to say it was like 2019 maybe, at the CryptidCon in Kentucky, and she was so sweet to me, and we talked about stuff we wanted to do together, and then I never got around to it, and then she passed before we could do it. We had email correspondences prior to her, not too far prior to her death too. But the movie, I'm beyond Dawn of the Dogman and our Bennington Triangle movie. There's this Kinderhook movie that's coming out. Is like, that is as far toward like a character study as I've ever done. It's a
Wow.
And it's funny because it's like we published Bruce's book, which, by the way, if you haven't talked to Bruce Hallenbeck, you definitely should. He wrote the Kinderhook Creature book, and that STM published, and then he he's obviously a key part of the movie. But it's funny, we'd chosen that movie in part because I felt I owed it to Bruce when we filmed Beast of Whitehall. That was my first time ever hearing about the Kinderhook Creature. I'd never had no awareness of that story, had never heard of the Blob or any of that. I only knew about the Kinderhook Creature. And so we made Beast of Whitehall, and then years pass, and we made On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Journey. And when I made that, I was like, I want to do something about Bruce in this movie. So I'm going to contact him, and we're going to go to Kinderhook, and we're going to do a sequence about the Kinderhook Creature, because it kind of ties into, the natural lay of the land in that part of the country. And so I contacted Bruce, and he was down to do it. So we went over there and we filmed this entire hour plus. We actually had to shoot his interview twice because something happened with our mics.
Uh-oh.
And so we shoot his interview twice. And then I know he kept saying to me, he was happy we were covering his story, but he really wanted to be able to talk about the other stuff that had happened beyond the Bigfoot sightings. And I was like, yeah, probably not going to work in what we're doing. But I was like, I would love to do this at some other time. And so I never forgot that. And when we started doing publishing, I said, Bruce is the guy whose story needs to be told. Like, he's been wanting to tell the story for years. And so, we published his Kinderhook Creature book. We not only published it, but I talked him into doing it. I was like, I contacted Bruce, and I was like, Bruce, I didn't have to talk him into it, but I was like, Bruce, would you want to do some sort of memoir about the things that happened on your property when you were a kid? And he was like, yeah. And so that was the first big book we published. Right. Now that I'm saying that, I think Dogman Triangle came out after that. I think it was
Aaron's book. I need to get both of them on. I've never had Aaron on either, so I need to get.
Yeah, you got to get Aaron on. Yeah, Veggie Man was the first book. It was like a children's book, written by Michael David Strayer and illustrated by Bally Raven. And then we did the Kinderhook book, and then the Kinderhook book didn't sell well, which didn't sit right with me because I know how much work goes into writing a book versus what an author actually gets in return for that work. And it's not good. It's not a good situation. So, I had read the book and loved the book, but I told Heather, I was like, I want to be able to tell that story visually now, because I'm ready to kind of go back to that story. And, so I contacted Bruce and said I wanted to make the movie, and he was totally down for it. And then the week before filming, literally the week before filming, and even into the filming, we were filming everything. We stayed in Vermont, right at the base of Glastonbury Mountain, which is where the Bennington Triangle is. And then an hour and a half down the road is Kinderhook. So we're doing all this at once. We're going to film the Bennington movie. We're going to film this Kinderhook movie. We're going to film an entire 6-episode series called Monsters of the Northwoods, or Northwoods Bigfoot, I think is what we ended up calling it, but should have been Monsters of the Northwoods. But we right before, the week before, I started rereading the book, and there's a lot of subtext in there about Bruce's upbringing and kind of being an outcast and stuff I hadn't really caught the first time through. And it also could be that my mom passed. I keep mentioning my mom's passing, but obviously a big influential event.
Yeah, of course.
It might have been the fact that my mom hadn't passed when I read that book. So rereading it a second time, maybe I was just better tuned to that. But I really locked on to the fact that he had this really sweet relationship with his grandma, and his grandma raised him, and he had kind of been I don't want to put any words in his mouth, so I got to be careful when I'm talking about this. But he was raised by his grandma, despite the fact his mom and dad lived right across the street, essentially. And so that was what I latched onto. Not any, nothing about blobs or ghosts or poltergeists or UFOs or Bigfoot. It was that relationship that I was like, this is what I want to learn about. Like, what the heck? Like, what is that like as a kid, to have that kind of upbringing, and then to have a lot of this activity, the bizarre activity that does occur around the house, seem to be associated with his grandma specifically, to the extent that when she passes, like, there's a really poignant story that ends the movie about how, like, after she passed, he was sitting outside his house really heartbroken one night, and he saw this red light in her room, and there was no explanation for it. And the red light wasn't there when he went upstairs. It was just this mysterious light that came on in her room, bathed the whole house in this glow. And that's the stuff that, like, that movie is very much a study of Bruce Hallenbeck as a person, and what it's like to have someone in your life who believes in you 100%, because it's really obvious that his grandma believed in him. But it's also about, like, that movie is about what happens when paranormal events intrude into the real everyday lives of people, because that is the thing that gets kind of overlooked in all of this is this stuff happens to people who are just trying to live their lives, like pay their bills and go to work and raise their kids or whatever. That's who this stuff happens to. And it isn't always like outside of our niche community. It's the view is that anyone that claims to have these encounters is some sort of fame chasing weirdo, but for the most part, the people I talk to are just ordinary everyday people. And that was what I really locked onto with this Kinderhook thing. And I'm excited. I honestly should send you a screener, because
I was going to say that
it's already gone out. Yeah, it's not going to be out till next spring is the thing. It won't be out probably till April.
Let's have you back to talk.
Yeah,
a screener, and we can talk about that extensively. Do you know approximately when in the spring, or?
I don't. We're going to self-release it, so it's kind of in our hands. You
should world premiere at Midwest Weird Fest. Just saying.
When is it?
First weekend in March.
Yeah, that might actually work. See, the movie's done. Bruce wants me to come to Kinderhook and do a premiere in Kinderhook too, but we haven't shown anything at Midwest Weird Fest in years. So
I know I missed it.
I abandoned film festivals in general, which was not any sort of thing aimed at you. And I'm sure I already know, like, your approach to it's very different, but I had such a negative experience with film festivals for a while. I'm just a baby when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I'm really excited for that one. That's one where, like, I got wildly attached to the story and Bruce and his grandma. Like you kind of you kind of figure out. Sometimes you have a story you're trying to tell where you figure out right away what you want to do with it, like right at the gate. And when you do that, a lot of times those are the best things I've made. Like our Bell Witch movie is my favorite movie we've made. And that was one where I knew what I wanted to do right out of the gate.
I physically bought the DVD of that from Heather, by the way, when we were both speakers at Crossing Realms conference in Missouri earlier.
Oh, cool.
So I
is that Alton?
Sorry, what's that?
Is that Alton?
What Alton?
Alton, or no, Alton's Illinois.
Yeah, no, it was where was it? It was just outside of Kansas City. I can't.
Okay.
It was actually no, I can remember. It was Richmond, Missouri, which always made me want to say Richmond, Virginia, because that's what you think about it. But it's a town outside of Kansas City. So
okay.
Yeah.
Bell is one of my favorites. There was just such a there's something. I mean, there's no two ways about it. There's times where my brain is just locked in and I'm firing on all cylinders, and I wake up in the morning and I have a new idea for a scene I want to do. And then there's movies where I'm like, I have to sit here and force myself to edit scene by scene. And it's not that I'm uninterested in the story or I'm not attached to the people. It's just that some stories are harder to break, you know, at the same time, like sometimes those movies end up being Terror in the Skies was like that. Like I had no idea what
My
we were
daughter
gonna
loves that movie, by the way.
my
She's
son
into
does.
dinosaurs and all kinds of, the kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's what my 8-year-old is a big fan of Terror in the Skies. There's others. I mean, a lot of the bigger, like the On the Trail of UFOs and stuff, I've had that issue where I'm like, I'm forcing myself to do this and I have ideas, but I don't know how to execute it on it. With Kinderhook, it was like I'd have an idea and then I'd just be like, I'm gonna shoot this and make it work. However, it felt like, we were talking about all the early days of making movies. That's what that felt like for me. There is something very like freeing about kind of doing it completely alone. And I was doing a lot of, once we got past like obviously filming the documentary portions, it became more about what can I accomplish on my computer downstairs or filming something in my backyard with my A7S III and like a piece of green cardboard, as a backdrop. What can I do? And then that really was like the fun part of putting that movie together. It was also super stressful though. Like Courtney, my wife, told me like you're still like decompressing from from putting that movie together.
By the way, I mentioned so many small town monster people before. I forgot to mention Shannon LeGros, who, when you talked about the UFO series, she's also in one of the Bigfoot ones. She's an amazing human being as well. It was great to, and in the Dogman one, she's in a number of your.
Yeah, we're prepping to go. We actually just had our first production meeting today for On the Trail of UFOs season 2 and Dogman Legacy, because she's involved in both of them, and we're filming both of them in the same time somehow in 1 week. 8 episodes, 8-hour-long episodes of On the Trail of UFOs season 2, plus an entire movie we're going to somehow do in a week when she's here. So we haven't actually filmed together since 2023. It's the longest we've gone since probably 2018 without doing something together.
Wow. Well, say hi to her for me. I haven't talked to her for ages. So yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's great. You know what? I've had you on for an hour plus now. An incredible conversation. I'm serious. Let's get you back for the Kinderhook thing in the spring. If you want to screen Midwest Weird Fest world premiere, hit me up after the show. But you were just an incredible guest, Seth. I've wanted to talk to you for years on the show, so it was so great to have you tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll do it whenever.
Man, and what URLs would you best direct people to? Obviously, smalltownmonsters.com will be in the show notes, and the YouTube channel will be in the show notes. But is there anything additionally you'd like to point people out at the moment?
Just smalltownmonsters.com, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. We've got a lot of quote unquote content coming out on multiple platforms now. Courtney, Andy Matsky, and Aaron Deese have been working really hard on getting stuff redistributed to other platforms. So if you're a fan of our stuff, it's finally, after losing our previous distributor, we're finally getting things rolling again. I know a lot of new stuff is popping up on Future today has a streaming platform called Fossum, which is kind of like a Tubi competitor. It's pretty cool. They have a bunch of our stuff, and they're going to have a lot more. Stream Beacon TV is about to get a bunch of our stuff. That's Shane Pittman's paranormal streaming platform. And then what is the other one? Oh, Alien Nation, which is like a streaming channel. They've got a lot of we have a direct relationship with them, so a lot of that stuff. But if you're like, I don't have any of that, then check Amazon and Tubi, YouTube, obviously, and what's the other one? Roku has a bunch of our stuff now, so we're starting to trickle back out all over the place. So just look stuff up. If something isn't out yet and you're like looking for it, like I think it's Invasion on Chestnut Ridge might not be available anywhere currently. You can still get DVDs through smalltownmonsters.com, but some of these older movies were just now finally getting back out. So yeah.
Chestnut Ridge is such a great movie. People should go and buy the DVD from smalltownmonsters.com if they don't have it. It's one of my favorites. It's so great.
Awesome.
Well, again, thank you, Seth. And until I get to talk to you again, which hopefully will be the not too distant future, and until I get to talk to everybody else out there, which will be same weird time, same weird network, the Untold Radio Network, next week at Thursday, 9 p.m., please keep it weird.